Today, I'm going to talk about the drip campaign feature in MassMailer. So how to run a drip campaign or a sequence of emails using Salesforce Campaign Members and also the process builder within MassMailer. Just to highlight what do we really support. So the infrastructure that we have is, of course, we are all familiar with MassMailer. So one is the UI-based email that you're sending, and at the same time, we do have the ability to trigger an email via like an alert, right? And that email activity can be invoked in the process builder or flow builder or even the cloud flow designer, right? This is all Salesforce infrastructure when it comes to the process builder, flow builder, the flow designer. But what at MassMailer, what we have done, we provided the hook so that we don't have to reinvent everything what Salesforce has done. So just use the existing infrastructure, which is much more powerful, but use that MassMailer integration when it comes to sending out email alert. So what it means is that we provide an Apex class, but nothing technical. When you are looking at the UI, you will understand it's more like a regular UI. You just have to pass in some values to the MassMailer email alert, such as who is the sender, who are you sending this email to, and what is the template that you're using, and few other options that you would see if at all you want to use them. And what we're going to talk today is about campaign members. We do support any object, as you know, but I think it's more appropriate if we talk about campaign members, at least in this webinar. But in the future webinars, I'm definitely open to talk about a custom object or any other flow. But this is, assume that what I'm going to demonstrate today is just one approach. There could be, 100 different approaches how you can actually trigger a drip campaign. But I at least want to kind of cover the fundamentals so that you kind of get an idea what a drip campaign means and how that can be triggered using process builder within MassMailer. This is just an example that I've just taken a screenshot so I kind of get an understanding here. So assume that this is the flow, what you want to build. You have a campaign and it's got some campaign members. So it's more like a static campaign. So once you finalize your campaign and the campaign members, it is that in this example, at least, you don't want to add new ones because you won't be able to start from the drip one, anything that is added once the campaign gets started. So once again, in this particular example, but as I said, there are 100 different ways we can send out a drip campaign. But in this example, I'm just going to demonstrate how you can create a campaign, add campaign members to it already, and then start the drip campaign, right? So you're basically starting with campaign, and then you want to trigger a drip in which you're going to evaluate certain criteria, and then you're going to invoke say drip one. It could be immediate, or it could be scheduled, but in this example, I'm just going to show you how to trigger it immediately, the very first drip. And then after a few days or few hours, it all depends on when you want to schedule it. Salesforce is at least flexible in that matter. So you can invoke drip 2. That is a scheduled action after 3 days in this example. Again, Salesforce process builder is flexible that you can choose any days as the gap or the time lapse. And then if you want to look at how does the drip 1 would look like, again, we're going to invoke it on campaign. You will have certain criteria on drip 1, meaning like making sure that the campaign is still in progress or something like that. and then you're going to invoke drip one. That's all what a drip one would have, and it'll be the same thing for drip two as well. So you will have drip two criteria, and then you want to send drip two, and then finally, if you want to look at what are we really passing to this, or rather the action that we're going to take here. If you notice this, the action, it says send drip one email, and the Apex class we are going to call is email via MassMailer, and this is just a method that we're trying to invoke to send out emails, and it'll have certain parameters are given, very basic, fundamental, are the bare minimum fields that you need to have here. There's a few more advanced features that I may or may not want to talk in this webinar, but I did cover all the Apex parameters in the previous webinar if you're interested. But at least the goal today for me is to kind of make you familiarize, what are the basic necessary parameters that you need to pass to this email activity class that we have. It's the email via MassMailer. So if you look at it, we are sending the template ID, and we are also identifying that we are invoking from campaign. So that's a referential parameter, the second one. These two are absolute necessary. And then you have the from name and the from address. Even the from name is not mandatory. It's always a good practice to have the from name and the from address. Reply to is automatically taken if it is not set up. Assume that the reply to is same as from, but you can always change reply to if needed. And then what are we doing? We are actually sending it to campaign members. In this scenario, we're sending it to all campaign members. We're not really categorizing the campaign member status here, even though that is an advanced feature where you can actually suppress any campaign member status if needed. Otherwise, in this simple example, all we are saying is, hey, send out to all campaign members. That's what this particular Apex class is getting as the input parameters. Okay. So where do you define all of this? I think it will be easy when I actually show you how to do this in Salesforce. Let's take a look at the Salesforce environment now. To start with, I'm going to go very easy on you here. So let's go to campaign. Let's just go create a test campaign. Since most of you are familiar with our campaign feature, I'm just going to go select a list view there. And then I will just give a name here. So let's call this as I'm going to call this as MassMailer drip campaign. So let's just do that, and then go next. So what I've done so far is just created a MassMailer campaign, right? I'm not even adding anything else, meaning I'm not even adding any campaign members for a moment. I would just go close this so that I go back to my regular standard Salesforce campaign view. The reason why I'm going here is I need the campaign ID. So that's how we kind of reference any campaign. So this is the Salesforce ID in the address URL. You can see this ID. You got to store that somewhere in a notepad or somewhere. That's the campaign ID. That's unique ID. I don't want to use the name. Even though you can use the campaign name, but it is better to use the ID so that it's always unique. And there's no spelling mistake, nothing. So that's the reason why I'm just picking a unique ID. If you have something like campaign number or any unique referential field on the campaign, you're free to use that. but this is just my preference. It's not mandatory. I just want to make sure that it's unique. So I created a campaign. I picked up the unique ID, campaign ID there, and then I'm just going to go add a campaign member. I'll just add maybe a single campaign member. Just going to go pick one lead there. Okay, so I have one, and I'm just going to go add this as a campaign member, and then I will maybe select another contact so that you know that you can send it to both. It doesn't matter. And I'm not going to cover the full-fledged template building and merge fields and all that. Since you may be familiar with those features, if not, I've covered that in another webinar. So right now, if you can take a look at this, we got two campaign members, one lead, another one is a contact, right? So you got the campaign that is set. And I've taken two templates. So this is for drip1 template, and then this is for drip2 template. Again, if you're not familiar with the Salesforce ID, it's not anything complicated. I'll just go show you. You can just put that ID here in the address URL right after force.com, and then if you enter, that's actually going to bring up that particular record. It's so easy. So I'm just doing it just to show you the template, the template one that I have. So let's go take a look at it. So there is this template, the classic email template that I created. Again, if you already created a template, you can find out the template ID from the address bar. I know it's a little tricky, but again, once you are familiarized with that, I think you'll be fine. So this is in Lightning. Classic actually will give you the ID quite easy for the eyes. So this is just a simple template. And let's say if you want to know the actual ID for this, if you ever switch to Classic, the template ID, and I'm gonna copy paste that. Once again. So you would see this. I mean, even if you load any other template, you will see this ID coming up like this. So it's quite easy. If you want to know, let's go to email template, classic email template, and then open up any. It doesn't matter, and it's gonna show you the actual Salesforce ID. So I'm taking this again. That's the identifier that we use in the Apex class. So it's mandatory that you actually pick up this Salesforce ID for the template. So I got two, one for the drip1 and second drip2. So we got three IDs. That's good enough for me to get started. So I'm going to go to how to go to Process Builder. Again, you go to the Salesforce setup, since you're familiar, so the Salesforce setup, and then you would be shown this particular page here. Do quick find Process Builder. This may sound, not this may sound, it is a little technical. So either you got to be an admin, or maybe if you're a power user and passionate about Salesforce, you can do it yourself. Otherwise, you can always hire somebody who is more familiar with the Process Builder or can learn quickly and then build. We do have an article that explains how to build this from scratch. And this video, of course, will be posted to YouTube and we'll circulate this. At the same time, currently we have not packaged these templates. So we are thinking of either doing maybe a flow designer package component, or maybe a process builder. We still haven't decided which way to go with. But I think once you kind of understand this, not rocket science, it may just take half an hour to kind of at least get everything set up. Okay, so I have one example right here that's called static campaign member list. So this is already built, and I'm actually going to build it from scratch. So this is just to kind of show you that you got a campaign. You're running this on whenever the campaign is created or edited, and you're trying to trigger the drip. by giving a criteria there, and then immediate action. I'm gonna invoke drip one, and after 3 days, I'm gonna invoke drip two. So the drip one and drip two is another sub process that I'm gonna invoke, and I'll show you what it means and how you can invoke them. So this is kind of a structure that I have. And again, this can be designed by you. There's no set rule that you have to do the exact same thing. It all depends on your company or your organization requirements and how you want to implement it. So once you kind of get familiarized with the process builder, I'm sure you can do it on your own. So let's just go build from scratch. So I'm going to go say view all process. So this is not the most user-friendly feature that Salesforce has got. You can do the same thing in Flow if you're familiar with Flow. But right now, I just want to demonstrate how you can do it with the process builder. Okay. So let's just go click on this new button, and I just start to give a name here. I'm just going to say drip campaign for webinar. And then that's it. And select the process when a record changes. And again, I'm going to show you what it means, and then save this. We're going to invoke this on campaign. So just select campaign as the object. And when the record is edited or created, so that's what I'm going to select. You don't need to select anything here. Make sure that you don't select this location. That's very important. So basically, just select when a record is created or edited, and then save it. And I'm going to deactivate the other one that I have just to make sure that there's no conflict. Okay, so now we are trying to invoke this in a campaign, but we need to have a criteria. So when to trigger the drip, right? So trigger drip criteria. Yeah. So here I'm saying the conditions are met. So whenever the conditions are met here, that's when I want to invoke a drip. So first of all, what I need is the campaign ID. So I don't want to invoke every single campaign that's in the system. So I need to kind of stamp what is that particular campaign ID that I want to invoke, which I copy pasted here. So select the campaign ID. So that's first, number one. Campaign ID equals this. And then when do you want to invoke campaign? So I'm just going to show you an example here. Again, this is not the only criteria. It could be anything that you wanted. It all depends on how you want to design your drip campaign when you want to invoke. One simple example could be that, so there is status. If you see this is the campaign, there's a field called status and the start date, right? I thought I would use these two fields. Let's say the status is right now it is planned. So I'll go to details. So the status right now is planned, but it has other values such as in progress, aborted. So I thought I would use in progress to kick off the campaign and aborted to stop it. Again, this is something that you can always finalize on what status value that you want to have. But I want to pick up in progress. That's an example that I'm going to take. And then also I want to use the start date so that I can actually tell the system that, hey, this is a start date. And then relatively after 3 days of the start date or 4 days of the start date, I want to use, I want to trigger drip 2, kind of a thing. So this is just an example. Again, it all depends on how you want to design your own drip campaign. I leave that over to you. So going back here, I'm gonna give another criteria here. So that I'm gonna call as status. So if the campaign status equals in progress, and that's when I want to trigger the drip. Right, that's the second criteria. And the third criteria is I want to make sure that the start date is not null, Boolean false. So uh, that's the simplest criteria that I want to start with. Again, it can be anything which can be more complex than this, right? So let's make sure that what do we have here? Do you want to execute the actions only when the specific changes are made to the record? I'm going to say yes because I don't want to. So if you look at the original criteria, I said whenever campaign is updated or created, but you don't want to repeatedly invoke this campaign every time something happened to the campaign. Like, if somebody changed the description or name, you don't want to trigger this again and again. So I want to make sure that only when the field that is in progress is changed, that is what I'm saying. Do you want to execute the actions only when the specified changes are made to the record? That's true, meaning anything that is changed here. So I would just say save. So now I have the campaign. I want to trigger the criteria. I want to trigger this drip campaign uh, when these conditions are met. And then what do you want to do immediately? And again, you have two options here. You can invoke a drip one, or you can actually wait for some time and then you can invoke drip one after some time. So that is also possible. I want to show you what is possible here if you want to invoke a drip. Um, the ideal way to do it is creating a process. I'll explain why you need to do that. So, like, one way is you want to invoke a drip. You can say, hey, I want to invoke a drip here. And then you can say, hey, I want to send an email right now using email via MassMailer. You can go just do this, right? This is drip one, and then define this here. The disadvantage, what I've noticed is that you will have to repeat. If you have 5 drips that you want to have, then you got to kind of enter all this information again and again, which is more repetitive. So I prefer invoking a process instead of immediately calling this Apex class. I would rather invoke a process which will eventually send this email. That is more easy. That way I can just clone a process and then create your drip one and drip two in just a click of a button. So if you don't want to do anything, that's an option too. So meaning, let's say you don't want to do anything immediately. You just select this MassMailer do nothing from here. So when you said Apex, so do nothing, right? I'm just giving a name. I'm just saying that, hey, immediately don't do anything, but I want to invoke the drip maybe, one day after I click on in progress or whenever you want to do it relative to start date. That's also possible. You can like build your own logic there, right? So MassMailer provides these three: email via MassMailer, MassMailer do nothing, and the third one is a verify via MassMailer, which is a new feature that we are releasing. So currently, it's in a kind of a testing mode with a few customers. We'll open up for other customers, hopefully by um, you know end of this month. So I'm scheduling a webinar to talk about the new features. Most likely the next Thursday, I'm going to talk about that. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I wanted to invoke drip one. I'm just going to type in here. If I want to invoke drip one, then what I need to do is I have to invoke a process, invoke drip one, and then I need an invocable process. So I have drip one for static list and drip two for static list that I've defined. Those are showing up right there because those are invocable processes. I'm going to build something new from scratch, which is similar to drip one to static list. Right? I'll show you how to do it. So let's just wait for a moment. I'm not going to do anything here. I would just switch the screen here, and then also maybe I'll go open up one more. So process builder. If it is a little technical, bear with me. Again, if you take a help from an admin or the power user, I'm sure it's going to be quite easy for them. So what I'm going to do, I'll go create another process and I'll call this as webinar drip one. And then you can give any name, it doesn't matter, and the description. And this process starts when it is invoked by another process. So just remember, the drip one that I'm going to build, I'm going to choose that it is invoked by another process, which makes it very clean. And I would just say save, right? That's all what I have. And then you're going to add the same thing, object. So we're going to invoke this drip on campaign, just save it. And the criteria. So what is the criteria? I call this as drip one criteria. And then again, when do you want to invoke this drip? Remember, we have the campaign ID. And I'm going to pick that field and make sure that we enter that ID. And then I'm going to check on the status too. I want to make sure that the status is not aborted. So anytime you want to quit, you can use that. So not equals. I'm going to just say does not equal to aborted. So that's an exit criteria. So this is, I mean, if you already had a question, hey, how do I stop this campaign in between for any reason? So if you want to use that as an exit criteria, this is the place where you can actually have that exit criteria right there. That way, you can just go to the campaign and change the status to aborted. Anything that is pending will not go because the criteria is not met. Okay. So I'm again saying all of the conditions are met. That's what I'm going to do here. And then just save this. Okay. And then what are we doing in drip one? All we are trying to do is we're just trying to send an email, right? So here I'm saying send drip one email. And we call the Apex class that is MassMailer, email via MassMailer. And then here we're going to give the template ID that I've already copy pasted. So this is the template that we're going to use. And the record ID, as I mentioned, this is something that you have to pass to the MassMailer method, that is campaign ID. That's the referential purpose that we are using campaign to send email. And then the from name, this is anything that you want to use. You can type in that value. From address, hopefully that is just going to be static that you want to type in. You can always bring it from a constant or a formula. There are options available, but assuming that you're always going to just get it from the, if you have a field on, say for example, if you have a field on campaign where you want to store the from name and then from address, you can always do that. That way, anytime you want somebody to trigger a campaign, like you want to kind of devise a process in your company and you want to store the field, the from name, from address on the campaign custom field, you can bring in this value from campaign object because we have the reference from campaign. So it doesn't need to be static. It can be a field reference. An example, you want to bring in the from name could be a custom field, right? I'm just saying, assuming that this is a custom field, you just say choose that. That becomes a reference point in which the system is going to look up what is the value from this field, and that'll be your from name. Okay, so that's possible to do it. That's the reason why we didn't want to reinvent everything. It's so easy if you just use the process builder or flow. And I may schedule another webinar how to use this with flow that is more, that may be more user friendly, drag and drop kind of a thing. And again, so this is the basic. Again, it's not that complicated if you are familiar with the process builder. And then remember, we have something called send to campaign members. you got to say that you want to send it to campaign members. So I'm gonna switch to the other window here. If you notice this, email via MassMailer text class, we have the template ID, we've got the campaign ID, and we got the from name, from address, and then send to campaign members history. Okay? So we got all those fields entered here, and then you just save this. So this is your drip one, right? All you're saying is, hey, I want to send it to the campaign, and I have a criteria for drip one, and I got this actions drip one and drip two. Okay. Now I want to actually clone this so that I can quickly create my drip two. So I would just go clone, and then I want to start a new process. It's not the same version. I want to create a new process. And I want to give drip2 as the name. So now I think you kind of understand why I'm invoking a process, because it's easy to clone a process, but you can't clone a single action. And it's also very clean if you actually invoke another process for drip1 and drip2. This could be another place where you want to invoke anything else. After drip1, if you want to do any action, you can always say that, hey, I want to add an action, right? That's possible to do it. Okay. So now you see this is my drip2, right? All I did was I just cloned it. Same thing, I'm going to run this on a campaign, and this I'm going to change it. I want to make it as drip2 criteria. And then here, the same campaign ID, no change, same criteria, everything is the same, and then I would just save it. Now the immediate action, I'm going to go change the name here. Instead of drip1, I would call this as drip2. Everything else is already there for me. All I need to do is, what is the template I'm going to use for drip2? Just copy paste the template ID, and done deal. You save this. So that becomes your drip2, right? So drip2 is already there. It's so easy, just a matter of a minute, clone it and make few changes in there. Mainly the criteria, the name and the action name, and the template ID. That's all what I changed here, right? So I got two drips now. You need to make sure that you activate this. So there's an activate button. You just have to click on that, make sure that you activate it. Same thing, we have webinar drip one. I'll try to find this webinar drip one. You see this is inactive. So we need to activate this before we invoke in the main drip. So now we got two drip that we created. And so if I go back here, here's the original one. And here, I'm supposed to invoke the drip one. And if I drop down, it is still showing the old list because, Salesforce, you've got to reload the page. So what I'm going to do, so this is the drip campaign that we ran, that we are creating, right? So I'll just go to cancel this, not doing anything right there, just view all process. So I'm going to refresh my screen just to make sure that it would load the latest processes that I created. Some time till it loads, and then reopen that the process, the original process that we were updating. So that's called, I think, drip campaign for webinar, something like that. Let's see. Okay, so drip campaign for webinar. Open this. So again, it's the same thing. So immediate action is where we need to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke another process. Invocable process. Now it shows those two that I created, the webinar drip one. So I'm going to call this as invoke drip one or trigger drip one, whatever you want to do. And then here, the field reference, all you need to do is you just have to select the same campaign record that started your process. Make sure that you select this, not the second option, the very first option. That's it. So invoking drip one, and then just save it. Now, when do you want to schedule the second one? Again, this is the simplest option right there. You have an option to do it after a few hours, or it could be a few days. That is the only option. It's not way too advanced in my opinion. but I think it solves the purpose. Let's say you want to do it like after 4 days, you want to invoke, and it's going to ask you after or before um, a specific date. And then here you can select the start date because that's what I want to kind of use in this particular example. It can be any custom date field that you want to do it, or maybe it could be after 4 days from now. So very simple. This is not relative. Basically, anytime the drip one basically got invoked, after 4 days from that time, without relying on a start date or anything, you want to invoke drip 2. So that's also possible. So both options are available. Let's just say start date, select that, and save it. And then what do you want to do after 4 days? We want to invoke drip 2, right? So you go to the processes again, and then say invoke drip 2, and then select this webinar drip 2. And then what is the object? The same campaign record we're going to pass, right? And then save it. That's it. So basically, what you've done is you kind of have the campaign whenever campaign status is in progress. That is what you're changing in the campaign. Whenever you select the date and make the campaign status in progress, you want to invoke drip 1. And after 4 days, you want to invoke drip 2. And we have already seen what is drip 1 and drip 2. So once you're good with this, you just have to activate this. So make sure that you activate this particular process. And then now what next? So we got the drip campaign that is ready. And then if you go back to this particular campaign right there, so I'm just going to go in the view mode. Okay, so this is the campaign. Let me just open it again. Drip campaign for webinar details. So it's in the status plan, right? And let's say you want to start. So you want to update this. So I'm going to make it as in progress, and then start date. So the criteria is start date is not null, right? So I'm just going to say start date is, it doesn't matter because we're anyways going to invoke it immediately, and then save it. So basically, we invoked, rather we triggering that with campaign just by changing the status to in progress and putting a date there, and then our process builder will kick in, and then it is supposed to send an email to us in the meaning to the campaign members. The two respective campaign members should be receiving an email, and then all of the rest of the process, such as status values, will get changed, and also the email campaign member status will get changed. Email MassMailer email status values also will get logged, and the activity also gets logged. As you can see, MassMailer email status, it already delivered those emails to the campaign members. It has created an outreach. Everything already started. So 2 of them got delivered. So 2 of them are in the delivered status right now. Okay. So that's how you basically invoke or create a drip with a little bit of an effort. It's not the most user-friendly way to do this, but it has got a lot of flexibility. I think if you weigh in, hey, do I really need a lot more flexibility, or does it need to be more user-friendly where the end users want to create their own drips? You can make a decision there. Again, if you have an admin or a super user who is familiar with Process Builder, who is interested in learning it, it's just a matter of maybe trying out a couple of times and then building this with campaigns, and you're good to go. And again, this is just one example. But if you want to kind of run a drip on, now we have done it on the campaign. So all the members in a static campaign are getting these emails delivered. You may ask me, hey, I want to run a drip. As in when I get new leads entered in my system, like maybe somebody is submitting a form on your website, you want to put them in a drip sequence. How do you do that? Because those are not static, meaning like today some people are filling up the form. You want to send them or put them in a drip, and tomorrow there are a few more people are submitting a form on my website, and I want to send uh, or rather put them in a drip again from the first drip to all those campaign members. How do you do that? So for that, the way you can do it is you got to run the same drip on campaign member instead of campaign. And I plan to talk about it maybe in another webinar. Uh, maybe not the immediate next one. After that, perhaps you will come to know when I'm going to talk about it. I'll demonstrate that, which is more like a dynamic list, meaning you still have a campaign that you're creating. You can call that as lead response drip or something, right? And then you want to invoke the drip sequence as and when any new campaign member gets added to that campaign, you want to put them in a drip. That is a different way to do it. Again, same fundamentals, but the object is in the campaign member instead of campaign. I'll demonstrate that maybe in the next webinar. Having said that, if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat window. Okay, I don't see any questions so far. Okay. And again, here is my contact information. So if you want to send an email to me later, that's fine. Or you can also log a support ticket on our support portal. No problem. And we have these weekly webinars running every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific. You will be receiving an email. It's also posted on our website. Once again, thank you so much for joining the webinar today. And I believe I'm going to talk about the new features that we are adding in the upcoming release. That is going to be the topic next week. If you're interested, please feel free to join. Anyways, you can receive an email. Thank you so much once again. Take care.